Hey guys, welcome back to Max Velocity Tactical. What I've got for you today is a presentation on the hasty attack. So what I'm going to show you is a squad level hasty attack, and so what's important to understand about that is that I'm showing it at squad level, but I'm using a 12-man squad. Additionally, there would be an additional guy, which is the squad leader, who would be the 13th man. But I don't show him today. I've just got three 4-man elements operating this hasty attack. What's really useful about that is that if you can understand the employment of 3 elements, then you could also consider that this hasty attack, which is happening at squad level with 3 teams, could also be 3 squads or even 3 platoons. So you're going exponentially higher in terms of the size of the unit you're using, but you're utilizing those 3 maneuver elements. Now, what's good about having those 3 elements, rather than having a 2-team squad, but actually to have a 3-team squad, means that what you can do is utilize what we call the assault cycle. So that, and it's kind of rough. It's a rough concept in terms it's not always utilized exactly the way I'm going to describe it, and you'll see that a little bit in the presentation. But effectively what you've got is one of those elements will be in a support by fire role, one of the elements will be an assault role, and the other element will be in what we would call reserve, or it could be flank protection role. So, and the idea would be that you would rotate through those roles. So for example, you may move from being a reserve element into being the assault element, and then once you get onto the position, then you would be in a support by fire element until that became no longer relevant, and then you move back into reserve or perhaps a flank protection role. So this drill is really useful in terms of training your guys to understand exactly how the assault cycle works. And so it's not necessarily true that you would specifically use this drill. So what I mean by that is that this drill is designed to be utilized against what you might call small pockets of enemy. So you're patrolling, you're advancing to contact, you come across a small pocket of enemy, and then you would deploy yourself to destroy that pocket of enemy. We're not talking here about a large, mutually supported, defended position in depth, because that's just beyond what a squad could do. And then obviously you're restricted. If you were part of a squad that was part of a platoon, part of a company, you'd be restricted in what you could actually do because there's so much more out there, okay? So what we're looking at here is a squad acting independently on patrol. And so the next part of that is that you have obviously decided that whenever you do get into contact with the enemy, you could be advancing to contact, or you could be just maneuvering on your patrol. The idea being that you would conduct an aggressive response, which would be in the form of a hasty attack once you come under contact from the enemy. So there's also another aspect to consider about this, is that you're advancing to contact, or you're simply out on a patrol, and you get into contact. Well, what that really means is that the enemy has actually initiated contact against you, so initially that enemy has the initiative. So you would need to seize back the initiative by winning the firefight against the enemy, and then once you've won the firefight, you could then deploy elements to assault that enemy. And so what's critical to this is that whoever is the leader of your element, your patrol, must do what we would call a combat estimate. So although we would call this a drill, it doesn't simply happen automatically. Because being presented with an enemy in a certain location, and your guys in a certain location, and having those 3 elements which you can utilize to maneuver and deploy, he needs to look at the ground and figure out, and just generally he's going to look at the left side, straight up the middle, and the right side, and what he's doing is he's looking for those covered and concealed approaches to move up on the enemy position. So what you'll see that I'm also trying to show in this presentation is that you're going to use the flank. And you should never underestimate the use of the flank. Even though an enemy is perhaps in a position and determined and perhaps engaging in a firefight with your guys who are in support by fire, ultimately if you maneuver on the flank, that has a strong psychological effect. That may cause the enemy to flee, to withdraw, etc. And so you should also consider what your objectives might be. Are you trying to fix the enemy in position so he cannot withdraw? Are you trying to get him to surrender? Or are you simply trying to fix him in position so you can advance and destroy him? So you've got to figure out what you're actually about here as you're doing this particular drill. So not covered in this presentation is the role of the squad leader. The squad leader is the guy that is going to decide what elements are going to do what in terms of this hasty attack. And you may have seen this a little bit in the previous video that I did, where I showed a hasty attack down at the Texas class. And if you watch that a little bit, you'll see that I'm in the video and I'm both doing safety but also running around, sort of fulfilling the role of the squad leader. And you see me kind of running around, and that's not something you want to do as a squad leader. Because what you don't want to do is just be out there on your own. And that is also a problem when you've got a 13-man squad, when you're the 13th man, is you need to be in the vicinity of one of those teams, otherwise you're just out there and vulnerable. Unless you perhaps changed it so you had 14 men or an additional headquarters element, so you could maneuver that element with its own protection, its own security. That's another thing to consider. But ultimately you need to be somewhere with one of the teams. And the way you could consider this, if you were the squad leader, is you could consider yourself being either at the center of gravity of your element in terms of where most of your guys are. You could consider yourself being in a position where you have best observation of what's going on, or you could consider yourself being with the main effort. So, and what would the main effort be? The main effort might well be that initial flanking assault to go around and take the enemy position. Maybe you would go around with that team. You could be somewhere in the vicinity of the support by fire element, which is going to give you maximum visibility of what's going on. So some of that's going to come down to how much communication do you have with your various elements? How much can you trust the elements to do what you need them to do? And how much personal leadership do you need to deploy as a squad leader to make this thing happen? And only you can make those decisions depending on what you've got. So what you'll see in this presentation is I don't have the squad advancing to contact, specifically anticipating this contact, which is something that you may well do. And you may well advance, you know, in a wedge. You may well advance by bounding overwatch. What I've got going on is I've got the patrol just moving across the screen in traveling overwatch, which is where we've got the three teams separated by a tactical bound. They're not in a particular ready for contact deployment. They're just moving in a file or column formation, each team. And then they come under contact. And so therefore what you've got to consider is that the enemy has been the one that decided to open fire. So the enemy initially has the initiative, which that particular team must seize back the initiative, win the firefight and suppress the enemy. Meanwhile, the squad leader is moving to a position where he can assess what's going on and decide what action he's going to take. So, for example, it may be that you've hit enemy that's just well beyond what you as a squad can deal with, and he may decide to break contact. It may be that he decides he can assault the position, he sees a suitable covered and concealed approach to the flank of the enemy position, and he may deploy a team to do that. And that's effectively what's going to happen today. I then show what happens if another depth position unmasks itself, and then what you would do with that. And that's where we'll use the assault cycle to bring the reserve team in. And I'll show that in the presentation. What I was possibly going to do today was make it a little more complicated, and I decided to stick with something pretty simple. And what I'm probably going to do is do some further presentations where I can show a little bit more how this situation could be more complicated. I could have it so that initially both enemy positions open fire, which you would think, well, we need more than one team to suppress two enemy positions. So how am I going to do that? One of the things that I did show in the video about Texas was I did have that point team going down the hill as if they couldn't see the enemy. Obviously, you know, I'm doing it for training value. They come under fire, and that team itself, it can't just go where it came under fire, which is on the X, and just stay there and then become support by fire. We haven't even talked about casualties among that team. We haven't talked about a whole bunch of other elements to what may happen to this team. And so what you should consider is that if you are a team that does come under fire from the enemy, and you're looking to move to a position where you can be a support by fire element, you probably can't be where you came under fire. And so you may have to bound forwards, bound backwards, or peel to the left, peel to the right to get yourself into better cover. And so what I did have happen with that team was I had them bound backwards to the hill crest, which was notionally a better position of support by fire. And something that I do talk to the class about this is that I didn't do anything more complicated with that squad that I had there that day. So I had the initial team come under fire and become support by fire. I then had the second team move around to the flank, and the third team move around as a reserve element. Potentially as a squad leader, what you could do is if you'd sent a team down the hill and they got into contact and they were trying to fight back to a better position, then what you could do at that point is deploy another team forwards to help them with support by fire to get them back out off the X and back up on the hillside. And of course that would be even more relevant should they have taken casualties, etc. So don't want to sort of make this too complicated right now. What I'm going to show you today is what is effectively a pretty simple drill utilizing the three elements and then coming under fire from one enemy position and deploying to destroy that enemy position, and then subsequently coming under fire from a second enemy position and utilizing the assault cycle to then maneuver on that second enemy position. classes offer real life experience of putting these tactics into action. I do invite you to sign up for MVT classes in 2024. You'll have a great time, you'll meet like-minded people, and it'll be definitely worth your while. Invest in yourself and invest in the survival of your team and family. Thanks very much.